All right, two of the most common and simple problems that you will find that most people overlook when dealing with one of these lawnmowers. This is a Briggs & Stratton powered 190cc flathead. It's not an overhead valve, it's an old one, but this is a newer style MTD body. And the older Craftsman's. Very common problem, very simple, actually not expensive to fix. You will need a part and you will need a nut driver, and but really simple to fix. Let me show you what it is. Let's get started in Atch's Garage. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I was just taking a quick break. I didn't realize you guys were there. What are you doing? You're smoking pot over there? Listen, fellas, I'm not smoking pot. It's not a pipe, right? It's just a prank. This is what you're going to need. And we'll get a closer look at it in a minute. I think I just got carbon in my mouth. I'm fooling around, okay? This is a little extension manifold. It is your intake tube. And it's broken on this engine. Let's get in tight. Let's get in close. So just a little backup story of what we got here. And no, the smoke it's coming from my cigarette. Why are you smoking, Arch? You're not supposed to be smoking. Listen, stop. Okay. 190cc Briggs & Stratton engine on an MTD body. Comes in, I own it, it's mine. Actually, it's me and Mikey. Sight unseen, looked okay. The blade was a little bit barked, threw the blade out, cleaned up another blade, took a look at the, pull everything off, got it all cleaned up, pressure wash, pulled the top off, right? This flywheel, coil spun. Wait, hold on, let me show you. Hold on, I'm getting mixed up. So, check the coil. Coil is good, compression is decent. Arch, what the hell is that? Right, exactly, what the hell is this? So this was all wrapped up underneath the flywheel, all wrapped around the top of the crankshaft, and the key was definitely knocked and kicked. So probably when somebody was pulling this over, they hit something, it started kicking back. But this, they couldn't get it started again. But there was other problems. It went over the carburetor, it had some water in it, it was a little cheesy. We got all that cleared out. Now, I refurbish these, so I make them mint again, and I sell them. I checked the compression, like I said, I checked the coil. Compression was about 60 pounds. Briggs says 40. All right, let's get to the point. We want to know what it's a short video. Shush. So I want you to know this is kind of what I do. I go over it. I'm actually going to tweak the things and grease and everything. I lube the cable. We're getting there. Right? And as I go in deep, I got the carb off. Now I want to show you one of the tests that I do. Now, obviously, you check for spark and all the other stuff, and I make sure that this automatic choke is working good. And now I'm getting ready to put it back together. I'm just kind of looking in closer. And I'll show you two things. Now, usually this tube is loose. Every time I check it, I tighten it. And it's always loose. It takes about a half a turn, and it gets tighter again. Now, there's a gasket that goes underneath this. So let me show you close. We'll get in tighter. Now, usually when I take off one of these tubes, his is cracked. So we're going to look, and I'm going to show you how to quickly check it. There's usually a gasket underneath, and it gets brittle. So be very careful. But when I went to rotate the carb, and we'll see in a minute, it was moving way too much. So that's the first indication. The second one is make sure this is tight. If it's not tight, it won't seal right. Now, even if it's not cracked, if it's not tight, what's going to happen is it's going to cause an intake leak, and it's going to make you think the carb isn't tuned. And then you could be drilling carbs and God knows what else. Here's the key, what's left of the key. I might as well finish my cigarette now I'm here. What's left of the key? I'll turn that light off for a minute. All right, so key's replaced. That's all cleaned up, that's done. Everything else is working good. It's time to fix the car mount, right, the tube. So let me throw this out. Let's get you in tight. Now, another thing I do is I always tighten up the bolts that hold the head on. Don't torque them. There's too much gack and crap on these bolts, on the shanks, on the threads. You're not going to get an accurate torque reading. And this one, they were loose, so even though it's like 50, 60 PSI, I checked it after I tightened it. You want to be careful with that. If yours is getting loose, get on it, because you'll blow a gasket out. And even after tightening it, you could still blow a gasket out. Let's get the camera. Let's get in close. Let's stop fooling around. Let me show you more. All right, let's get started on taking a few parts off. We'll pull the carburetor off, pull the coil off. We'll get that tube out of the way. The kind of stuff that we have to do to get in there. We already have, at this point, we already have, you know, the cover off. It's open, clean. I want to reiterate that. Remember, it's air-cooled, so, you know, good oil, a clean engine underneath the valve cover. This had a mouse nest underneath it. You want to make sure things are clean at least once every so many years. But if you're having problems and the engine won't run right, or it won't start, or won't run at all, these are the things that you want to look for. They may or may not be your problem, but certainly as the video unfolds, this is the stuff that you want to look for. And you got some bonus stuff coming up. So let's start taking it apart. All right, notice that I'm turning the carburetor a little bit. And as I put the wrench on it, or I should say the socket, and I like 1/4-inch drive. Keep in mind, no power tools here. See how it's turning a lot? It's moving a lot. No power tools, 1/4-inch drive. You will break stuff. You don't want the banger guns. I say this constantly because you're going to break stuff and you don't know how tight you're making things. So it's important to begin to learn how tight to make what you're doing. You know, how tight does a bolt need to be? This is little engines. There's not much to them. So we'll get the carburetor out of our way, and then we'll pull the coil off next. So that carburetor is all nice and clean. I've already gone over that. Nice O-ring. Don't forget your O-ring. Right, you're going to need to use your old one. Maybe put a little bit of WD-40, or I use. You'll see me use it in a minute. Get the coil off. And I like to use my transmission fluid mixed with a gasoline, about 50-50, and I have a video on that on a short. Let's pull this tube off. And you can see the crack, and this one's in really bad shape. And it does happen, but somebody's been in this machine. So there's so much evidence of, throughout the machine, you'll probably see more towards the end, somebody's been in it. So this is like a fibrous material. It's a kind of a plastic, similar more to Bakelite. And of course, the heating and cooling cycles have just ruined it. Now, I've already cleaned the face of the coil because I took the flywheel off. But I like to clean the coil. I want to make sure we have good ground, that the coil is clean. We're going to gap it to anywhere between 10 and 12 thousandths. That's 0.010, 10 thousandths, and 12 thousandths. So we want to make sure everything is clean and nice. We'll get a tight gap. We're going to do the standoffs that the coil mounts to on the engine block. That way we know it's going to shut off. We're checking our ignition. We're making sure it works and it shuts off. And here's a look at the gasket. Now, these are very brittle, these gaskets. So if you need another one, you're going to have to try and order it new. But be careful with it because it is brittle. I'm going to put some of my tranny fluid on it to sweeten it up. And look, you can see the intake valve moving a little. You could use WD or oil, anything to sort of sweeten it up, to make it a little bit more flexible. I'm also checking to make sure that the automatic choke stove is working. In this case, the flywheel is already clean, so we don't need to do anything there. And all we need to do is put the coil back, now that it's nice and clean, and the terminal as well. And don't forget to check the spark plug end, because a lot of times they're rotted. Now I have other things to do, so it won't be until tomorrow that I'll be able to test this thing out, because she's getting a little bit late. All right, and I like to use a nut driver for this. And I mentioned 1/4-inch drive. Nut drivers, do not use any kind of banger gun. No, none of this electrically powered stuff. You need to, I stress this a lot, you need to learn how to make things tight with your hands and get used to, like, what does that feel like? So we should be in a wide shot. Yeah, I'm in a little bit of a wider shot. So just snug it up. Make sure that's out of the way. Let's get it snug. I want to bring them in evenly. And just with the nut driver, There we go. A little bit at a time. And I could put a lot of force on with the nut driver. Now, if you crack the gasket, black RTV. If it's sometimes when you take these off, the gasket will crack. And I'll see if I can find, let's put this back. We'll put the carburetor on in a minute. See if I can find a replacement in Amazon or something like that, because I part out engines. I actually have another one to part out. So these got cleaned off, so we make good contact. We can get a good adjustment. That's in good shape. We don't need to worry about that. But if yours is really rusty, we just want to make sure we're getting, good contact to the ground so that it will shut off properly. And let's move that out of our way. A little bit of lubricant on these guys, just a little oil, just a touch. That's like my assembly lube, right? I'm using Rotella, what is it, 1540, I think? Diesel oil. I use that for a lot of stuff. And also I like to use it in any engine that maybe blows a little bit of smoke from time to time. Some of these engines, because they're getting so old now. All right, let's just snug that up, pull it out of the way. So you get a bonus too. You get a coil replacement and adjustment, just real quick. And just snug it. Okay, it's snug. Bring the magnets in. We'll drop in our 10,000s, get everything a nice hot spark. Everything's nice and clean and adjusted well. Everything got washed with the pressure washers, a little super clean if need be. And let's snug it up. Get it good and snug. Now, just to add a little bit, I'll go with my quarter drive and just snug it. That's it. Because remember, you're pulling in. It's another reason why I clean the coil. Sometimes I lubricate the coil too a little bit. If you want to keep this all nice, like the coil nice and the face of the coil nice, you can spray your chain wax on it. I talk about that a lot. Let me put this stuff away. Hold on. Let's hang the carb. And like I said, carb's all nice and clean. I already went over it. Start off with just to make life a little easier, my nut driver. Hold the carburetor. Don't let it rotate. If you rotate it too much, you'll snap it. All right, now that's on there good. Hang in there. We'll do a automatic choke setup for you fellas. But then I have some other things to do to it. All right, so here's the choke setup. I'll try and stand out of your way, but I'll bring you in tight. Now this is a little dirty, so we can just polish it. You want this clean, this rod here. You don't want any gook on it. Everything here's got to be clean. You got to clean down in there too. And I'll give you another look at that in a minute. And we're going to put a little bit of oil on it. That's it, just oil, nothing else. Just make sure she's moving good. Okay? And it's got to lock into there with that pin. A lot of people get this wrong. So I'll show you this setup. They get it all kind of crazy wrong. Again, with the nut driver only, good and tight. There's a shoulder stop, so it's moving that. It's moving the butterfly. Now when I clean these, I always take off the spring. On even the overheads, the overhead valve engines. Sometimes I use the pressure washer, usually I use the pressure washer, but I put it on low. That goes there. All right, let's make sure she's working good. Hold on. Now for the adjustment. And I'll get you in close. I'll show you the final. But there is a small amount of space between these two areas here. So I'm going to grab the other camera. So right now the throttle is closed because the choke stove, this is the choke stove in here. So you want a little lubricant in that. Make sure there's no junk in here. And it's moving well. So that's full open on the choke. It's closed because it's cold. And then as it, what will happen is the sail will push against this as well. So you're fighting the sail, the wind coming off the flywheel, and the spring, and this mechanism in here. So right now she's closed. So when the choke starts to open, this is going to move. And that's your adjustment. So there's about a 1/4 inch of space here. I could just about stick my pinky in between this and this choke butterfly or sail. Let me get you a tighter shot of that. All right, so this is where we are to start off with. And we're going to bend this out a little. Right now, this will keep the choke on longer in this setup, the way it is right now. I probably bent it a little bit, washing it, and then I bent it straight. And you want to make sure it rides right in the middle of that U-bracket. Okay? It sits in the middle. You don't want it leaning off to the edge. You don't hang it on it. Just like that. Now we're going to bend this tang out a little bit because that would make it very, very rich. Now there's a little bit less space. So as the stove heats up, that coil spring's going to contract. It's going to push this forward, taking that choke off sooner. So if you're seeing black smoke for too long, then you have to come back in here and bend that tang outward. Okay? Let me get you in close so you can see the distance. Choke closed. That's the distance. That's about where I set it for where I am. And it's just starting to open it, right? And then check its travel so that it goes all the way and opens up the choke blade completely. Now choke blade closed, a little bit of space that constricts, winds the clock, so to speak, on the choke stove. It's a divorce choke system. And this is now the sail is helping as well. Everything is fighting each other. And it's going to open it all the way open now. And we're at the end of our travel. And if you're not at the end of your travel, then you have to open up that flapper. All right? Pull it apart a little bit more. So we should be good to go. That's how you set it up. Nice and clean, not bent, not tweaked. Nice space in between everything. Very simple, nothing crazy. Let me continue and I'll see you guys in a bit. We'll do a test later. All right, it's raining out. So we're not going out there, but I just put some good used oil in it because we want to run it and I want to be able to dump it. And what was in there was a little bit on the end of the dipstick and it was black. Just got fuel in it. Plug is nice, all good to go. Everything is ready. We still have some finish work to do on it, but she's getting there. We're going to run it for a little bit. We're probably going to smoke. We're going to let it clear out, and then we'll bring it in for the final. I'll change the oil. All right, it's cold. Muffler's over here. And I have never, ever seen this thing run. But I've gone through everything. Let's give it a shot. Auto choke. All right, she started right up, but I can definitely tell you somebody's messed with the throttle. So we got to get in there real quick and bend that throttle back. And I'll show you that. Hold on, because I can tell you it's too high. All right, let's just take a guess. We're going to bend this tab in and loosen that spring a little. That should do it. And then I'll come back. I know it's a little dark over here, but then I'll come back and I'll show you again in the light later. And I'll adjust it. An old motor like this, we want about 3,000, maybe 3,200. All right? So it did smoke a little bit, but remember, we've been tossing and turning it. It has not run. There was water inside the combustion chamber, and I sprayed on 2 different occasions. I put some of my transmission fluid mix in there to loosen everything up and, polish things up. So here we go. Another quick pull and let it run. Running real strong, no vibrations. I'll let that paint and any gook that's been on here kind of burn off. As you can see, she's smoking a little bit. Remember, we painted it, and I got lubricants on stuff. And we'll let it cool down. We'll bring it in for a final and an oil change. Well, it's gonna puke. Yeah, oh, jeez. That is nasty. Oh, I can hear it. All right, let it do its thing. Let's set up with some fresh oil. All right, quick look, peek in here. So this was spent way too far out. Somebody's been fooling around in here. You could see all the signs of it, and they mucked about and made a mess. So I just loosened the spring a little bit and let the governor, because the governor's fighting against this spring tension. So if you loosen the spring tension, you get a little less total RPM. You want to tighten it, raise it up, you tighten up that spring, pull it this way, okay, towards the camera. I pushed it in the opposite direction. All right, let's finish it up. You know, all oils are the same.
The way I see it, all synthetic oils are the same.
Oh, think with your dipstick, Jimmy!
Look, if you're really particular, right, choose a decent oil. It's not that hard to change your oil. Like I did, you tilt it over on its side. Now I'm going to start off with about 14, 16 ounces. It takes about 14, 16, 20 ounces. It depends. It's a bigger motor. The newer motors is a little smaller inside. But you never know how much oil you get out. So check it with your dipstick, Jimmy.
Synthetics or synthetics?
Now, I've got some high mileage synthetic blend 10W30 passenger car oil. That's a good all around oil. It's cheap and you're not going to spend a lot. What's in it? Who the hell knows? It's got some stuff for high mileage. That's probably high mileage. I mean, this thing's been beat up like it's been high mileage and put away wet and rode hard. My guess is probably stuff to swell the seals, which is probably good. If you want, that's passenger car. This is diesel oil, my T5. If you burn a little bit of smoke and a little bit of oil, you might want to go to a 1540, but I would recommend that for warm weather. Don't use it in the cooler months. I think they do have a 5 something. You'll have to check on that. That's a better oil, the Shell Rotella. This is a good oil. It's a little bit darker. That's even a little bit darker than that. Like I said, check your oil regularly. I've seen some of these boxes on these new machines with the overhead valves, and they say don't change your oil, just add. Well, first of all, nobody adds it. Nobody checks it, and then they burn out. It's kind of stupid. It's so easy to dump this thing on its side, change your oil, get out there once a year, and check your oil regularly, Jimmy. All right, all joking aside, at this point, you can see she started right up. So pretty much all of my machines, this is what I do. I go through everything. In my situation, when I go through everything like this, I clean the gas tank, I go over the carburetor, I do the ignition, everything gets cleaned, of course, because I'm bringing somebody else's garbage into this nice shop and having insects and rodents and whatever. So I don't do that, right? I'm not a high volume shop. So I go through everything, but really when you go through everything like the way I do and check everything, you know what's bad, you know what you need to replace, and you know what you need to throw out. And some of these machines I make from 2 or 3. A lot of them get parted out, so I have these extra parts. I use the OEM parts. Like I said, I'll try and see if I can find one of those, but a lot of times I just use OEM parts because I part out so many of them and I squirrel that stuff away nice and clean as I can. But this is common stuff, and you got some bonus material, right? You got, well, let's back up. You got the bonus material of making the adjustment to the engine RPM. You got the bonus material of doing a quick coil cleaning and setup. And then you got the bonus material of going over the choke. All of these could be separate videos. And then I showed you about tightening up the intake tube or manifold and or replacing it. So really, the biggest one is when you're going over one of these, I would say the 2 general preliminary things that I do after checking compression and spark and all that. The 2 primary things is tightening up on these head bolts. And the other thing is tightening up on that intake tube. That doesn't cost you anything. So if you happen to be in there, whether you find one on the street, or yours is getting older, or you just bought one from somewhere at a garage sale or something and you want to go over it, makes a great hobby. You wind up with a really good machine. These are newer machines, slightly newer, except for the engine is the older flathead design. but they are newer. They're not as nice as the older ones. If you check out my channel, if you're new to my channel, come check out a lot of the older Craftsmans from the 2000s and even older. They just hold up so good. These will rot. They're not going to hold up the same way. There's a lot of extra plastic on here that need not be. This is the way things are. And the newest stuff coming out is probably even crappier. Thanks for watching this episode of Archer's Garage. I had fun doing it. Hopefully you guys learned something and enjoyed it. And I'll see you on the next one.